Story 1. Sometimes, when she's had a bad day, just let her know you hear her. That sucks, babe. I'm sorry to hear that. Then ask if she wants a hug. The magic of this is real. Story 2. More mother or grandmother than women in general, but housework. I knew how to take care of myself and my home long before I moved out at 20. I know how to cook, clean, wash my clothes, budget my income, pay my bills on time, and so on. And it all began when my grandmother started to teach me how to cook at age 7. Story 3. My old roommate was a cool person and could handle living with 5 guys. The idea of grooming came up and we all discussed what we did. She gave us the quote of the century and a sound piece of advice. Well, your balls are much more likely to go in my mouth if they are shaved. Story 4. If they are complaining or talking about a problem, always ask if they are looking for advice or help or just want to vent. A lot of guys only talk about problems if they are looking for advice or help and will assume the same. It makes some women very upset if you try to give advice, and all they actually want to do is have you listen. Conversely, I think this is something a lot of women do not understand about men. Story 5. I learned what validating and invalidating someone's feelings are. It turns out that telling someone they are silly for feeling a certain way is not what you are supposed to do. Story 6. Mom told me to find someone who loves me and not just someone I love to look at. To not accept bad behavior in a partner, basically, and have some self-respect. Story 7. When she starts to come, do not change speed, pressure, or rhythm. Do not move your jaw even a millimeter or change the angle of your penetration. Stay on target. Story 8. Take your time in several ways. Foreplay isn't a rush to get through just to check a box. The same applies to trying to solve problems. Listen, empathize, validate, and follow up with, is there anything I can do to make it easier or better for you? When feelings have been aired and validated as appropriate and justified, more often than not, that resolves the issue. Remembering important things and dates is important because it demonstrates that you were listening. Random small gestures show that you're thinking about them. It's not necessarily going to make sense because, generally speaking, most men and most women think differently. Story 9. How to be gentle in all areas of life. Not everything needs my maximum power output, and my views on strength were unnecessary. It's about standing up for what is right, not about picking up what is heavy. Story 10. I mean this with all sincerity. Learning how to properly listen in conversations for comprehension before making a response is important. You do not always have to immediately go into fixing a problem or an issue. Sometimes it is a lot better to make sure someone is being heard, understood, and validated. It has worked for me in a lot of areas in my life, not just romance. Story 11. Once my ex challenged me to get her wet. I went for neck kisses and caressing. Kind of worked, but afterwards she said all I had to do was tell her I love her. Story 12. Women deal with a lot of painful issues and they think that men don't, so they harbor an emotion that teeters back and forth between hatred and resentment for men expressing physical discomfort at anything, but especially anything related to genitals. Story 13. 1. If they end a long-term relationship with you, it's likely they've already, to some extent, grieved the relationship and moved on. Your chances of fixing things are very low, especially if you respond by chasing. Men grieve the loss after the breakup. Listen to them. We men often become deaf, blind, and oblivious when we're comfortable. My partner of many years, yes, the communication issues went both ways. But I'd stonewall, blow up, and mistake it all as nagging. In reality, looking back, she was just expressing basic needs, wanting an extra slice of my already fragmented attention. But I took it as her being clingy, controlling, and insecure. It cost me nearly everything. 3 years of madness, 3 years of depraved hell, but it was all necessary. She was the best buyer of gifts I have ever known, but her leaving was the best thing she ever did for me. If you really love her, and you feel like she's probably being insecure, then you're probably giving her many reasons to be insecure. If you've been dumped, do not run from the emotions. You have been given an opportunity to become the best version of yourself. Take your time, feel it, grieve it, talk about it. Do not wallow. Do not stay still. Listen carefully to the experience, stay social, stay active. It will be the well from which your humanity rests, and there is immense power in understanding suffering. Don't let your days become the same. Do not let yourself get too comfortable. Keep the experiences coming. The best relationships are the ones that are a bit boring, but both parties work to make them fun and exciting. Female aura is powerful and elevating, and it must be respected, protected, and embraced. If you're a small business owner, bringing the right woman in can completely uplift the vibe. I brought in my cousin, who is smart and cool, to my small, family-run business. Her thoughtfulness, sensitivity, insight, her wit and street smarts and tenderness elevated our working environment in a way that no one ever could in the 15 years we've existed. They see the world and express their humanity in a way that we cannot. Keep yourself clean, smell good, and stay well-groomed. As a chubby person who got fit after my breakup, it made me realize that a lot of women like husky men, just like many of us like full-figured women. Either way, just be healthy so you feel good. Okay, I have to go. Good luck, everyone. Story 14. When telling a story, venting, or describing a problem they have, the content tends to be 90% circumstantial and background information, and 10% of it will actually be the important part. They tend to give you the 90% first. Just be patient and wait for the 10%, and then don't give input unless she asks for it. Story 15. They're just people, and people can be unreliable, so you shouldn't trust them any more than you should trust men. Women also have the capacity for violence and even murder, and no amount of muscle is going to protect you from sharp objects or bullets, so stay safe out there. The most important lesson I learned from a woman is that women can be dangerous. Story 16. Are you angry? Or are you hungry? Somehow this phrase is acceptable for our toddler tantrums, yet when used for mummy meltdowns, it is not the same circuit breaker. Story 17. Trying to fix things rarely helps with emotional distress. Sometimes people just need you to listen to them and validate them or remind them of the great things about themselves they're forgetting. Story 18. That simple things like opening doors, following the sidewalk rule, giving compliments, and showing affection are not the standard. I was mind blown to discover how many women don't receive most, if any, of these things. Story 19. They have extrasensory perception when it comes to spotting needy males, and it acts as an instant repellent. The needier the male, the stronger the repellent. True self-confidence in males triggers the opposite response. Story 20. Female friends have clued me in to how I've let other women walk all over me. There is a difference between respecting and acknowledging their emotions and letting them abuse you. Story 21. I learned a lot about consent from a woman's point of view from a lesbian roommate when I was about 23. They also told me never to go further when things are getting intense if you even sense hesitation in your partner. She explained that some women might have sex fearing they might lose the person might go with somebody else, or they just won't be satisfied. This can apply to any gender. I was taught this as a young bisexual man in 1990. Story 22. If she does not like you in the first moments she sees you, she's never going to come around. It's not a romantic comedy. Also, expect each and every single piece of information about you and your relationship, even the most intimate, to be published, analyzed, and judged by her close friends. You have a birthmark on a butt cheek? Her friends will know. You like doing it with the light on? Her friends will know. You put milk in the bowl before cereal? Yes, her friends will know. Story 23. The low-level fear of men in general that women tend to live with. Understanding this has helped me be more empathetic and not take things as personally if women, especially strangers, are a little standoffish. Story 24. Are you in an environment that welcomes connection with random women? Most of the time, you are not. In line waiting for coffee? Not the time. Woman out with her friends at the club, very clearly with her friends, and no one is playing wingman? Not the time. Woman at the bar reading? Not the time. But say you see a woman at the bar and she's looking at you, maybe waves or makes prolonged eye contact, or a friend points her out to you. That's a good indication to approach. Or more obviously, like if you're at some sort of singles event or speed dating or something, that is the environment in which to create those connections. Basically, fellas, the applications are not ideal. But cold approaches are ill-advised unless you're under some pretty specific circumstances, or unless you're okay apologizing. But this certainly doesn't help my lack of confidence. Story 25. That feelings and emotions are two different things. All people, including men, care how you make them feel more than anything. If you make someone feel good, they will associate that feeling with you. The opposite is also true. Story 26. I grew up with my mom and two sisters, so I never had the influence of a man pushing me to love sports, drinking beer, or being a fully manly man. So when I say that I'd prefer to spend my free time reading or writing, or that I don't drink, it truly baffles some of the manly men I know. I've also grown up as a hugger. You want a hug? Bring it in. I have nothing against the physical touch of other men, and because I'm not used to openly talking about how attractive I find every single woman that I see, it has led to a lot of men in my life assuming I'm gay when I'm not. I'm just private about my sexuality and comfortable in my masculinity. In summary, you can do things that aren't typical manly things and still be a proper man. Story 27. Adjust my stance so I'm not blocking doorways, especially if she is seated and I'm standing. A lot of my ex-girlfriends are trauma survivors, and the first taught me, and the others commented on how I would adjust my stance so they didn't feel threatened. Story 28. Being interesting is the most attractive thing you can do. Just talk about your interests and have an active hobby you can talk about. Have a purpose in your life. It works. Story 29. Explanations are excuses. Impact will always be greater than intent, and it really doesn't matter what you meant to convey when you said or did something. How it makes that person feel matters more. Also, apparently, validating people's feelings is a basic human need, which a lot of people from my past owe me some back pay on. I'll tell you what. Story 30. The movies are a bad first or second date. You really want somewhere you can talk and get to know each other while also being very public. So, like mini golf or bowling, or in my case, the aquarium. Story 31. Women will undoubtedly always prioritize themselves endlessly, no matter how good you are to them. It's the woman who prioritizes you for a change that you want to keep around and keep happy. Lots of guys do the former and end up trapped in loveless and sexless relationships and marriages with women who honestly are not into them as much as they think. The problem is guys double down on these types of women while expecting different results and end up even more disappointed, depressed, and resentful. Don't be with the girl who's with you out of pure convenience while she drains your wallet, sanity, and dignity while she shops for the next guy to move on to. When the girl comes around who actually cares about your needs, wants, passions, and aspirations, that's the one you want to fully invest in. Story 32. Mama made sure I knew how to sew. Growing up, I was always told by my grandmother and mom that any man who cares about how he looks should at least be able to fix a button or hem his trousers. It's one of those things that everyone should learn to do. Story 33. That women are not better than men. Stop putting them on a pedestal. All that is going to happen is they will disappoint you, and you will get bitter and angry at them. Story 34. Women will break their rules for the right guy. If she won't break her rules for you, you are not her first choice, and she sees you as a backup plan. Story 35. Regular compliments matter more than grand gestures. My husband did not get this at first, but now he understands that small, genuine compliments throughout the week mean way more than one big romantic gesture every few months. Story 36. Period pain can be so intense it can nearly lay her out. My mom and aunt never had an issue with this, but my wife does. The way she still got up and did stuff shocked me. Story 37. Solving the secret at the North Pole opens a treasure of worldly pleasures. Never comment on the circumference of the equator. And unless it's your birthday, the South Pole is strictly off limits. Story 38. When they say, I need you to trust me, it means they did something they aren't proud of, or they are lying about something. If you were in a relationship, she might have cheated on you. Could also mean they don't trust you with what they are secretly hiding from you. Story 39. Just how much of the man-made world is made for men, specifically able-bodied men between about 5 feet 8 inches and 6 feet 1 inch? I never have to think about reaching something on a top shelf, changing a car tire, both unbolting it and lifting it, or climbing into and out of a pickup truck. even if not jacked up, or any number of things that are no trouble at all for me, an average-sized man, but can be a struggle for average-sized women. Story 40. So the other day, I just bumped into an Instagram reel about a guy doing the chore because his wife had a long day. And a woman commented by saying, "Helping is still confirming patriarchal rules of society because you're keeping yourself out of it. Doing the chores is also your job." I mean, it was obvious that the chores are also men's jobs, but seeing someone put it into words just hit differently. Story 41. Not all men, but those with long hair use conditioner. It helps it feel much better and reduces the frizziness that can arise after showering. I get a 2-in-1 conditioner, which can be harder to find than you would think. Story 42. That love sometimes isn't enough. Also, that you shouldn't leave the toilet seat up in a household of several women, especially if there's a really old one. Story 43. If she is attracted to you, relationships really aren't hard. You have to go out of your way to make them difficult. If it's difficult despite your best efforts, either she isn't into you, or she has a mental illness.